I am not alone when I say that upgrading to the iPhone 14 felt like a pretty bad waste of money. So with all of the iPhones you can buy from Apple today, which one is the best to buy right now? Now, of course, this will depend on your budget and what you need from whichever phone you buy. So in this video, I hope to help you make the right choice when picking up a new iPhone. To get started, first of all, let's just run through which iPhones you can buy right now and going from the cheapest to the most expensive. We've got the iPhone SE at just $429. Next up, we have the iPhone 12 at $599. And then we also have the iPhone 13 mini at the same price of $599. And here we basically go up $100 per model. You've got the standard iPhone 13 at $699, the iPhone 14 at $799, the 14 Plus at $899, the 14 Pro at $999, and finally the Pro Max at a whopping $1099. Now for the budget buyer, we have three options really. The iPhone SE at $429, the iPhone 12 or the 13 mini, both of them at $599. Now in this scenario, I'd actually recommend going with the iPhone SE, the cheapest model. We're actually getting only last year's flagship chipset in this, the A15 Bionic, which is the same as the iPhone 13. Now you also get a 4.7-inch Retina HD display, a single 12 megapixel rear-facing camera, and a 7 megapixel front-facing camera. It can shoot only HD video, not 4K. You get 15 hours of video playback in terms of battery life. It's water resistant up to 1 meter, and of course you get Touch ID. Now what you don't get are features like Face ID, where you can just unlock your phone with your face. You're also missing MagSafe, so the ability to be able to magnetically attach accessories and chargers, and particularly in the camera department, you're missing a few things. Now you're missing the ultra-wide camera for one, but also slow motion, there's no cinematic modes, you can't capture HDR or 4K video content, and the biggest missing feature of them all, there are no emoji or memoji things. But if most of those features either don't mean anything to you or you just don't care for them, then the SE is still a very, very good phone. I think the only big drawback of the SE is going to be the battery life, as it has the shortest battery life of all of the iPhones that you can buy from Apple today, which is actually quite bizarre because it's using the same A15 Bionic chip that the iPhone 13 mini has, and yet the 13 mini gets 2 hours more in video playback. Now when you consider the 13 mini also has a bigger, brighter and higher quality screen, leaves me wondering why the SE doesn't actually have the best battery life of all of them. So yes, the iPhone SE is the cheapest, but actually it comes with some better features than even the iPhone 12. So for me, that solidifies it as a firm favorite for the budget conscious buyer, and one you should buy if you're looking for the best bang for your buck. In terms of the best overall value though, I want to talk to you about the iPhone 13 mini. And I don't have one here, but the iPhone 13 mini, you get the latest generation A15 Bionic, which has only recently been superseded by the iPhone 14. And even then, many people think they just renamed the A15 to the A16 anyway to make it look like they've done something, and you wouldn't be far off. Performance on the iPhone 13 mini is of true flagship quality. Now you also get dual rear-facing cameras, a standard and an ultra-wide. You get Face ID and features such as ceramic shield, and MagSafe is back again. The display is also better. You get a Super Retina XDR OLED display, and that goes up to a maximum of 1200 nits peak brightness and 800 nits standard. You get IP68 for 6 meters of water resistance for up to 30 minutes. And in terms of video, you also get 4K, HDR video, and 1080p cinematic mode. Now those specs are all really, really strong, and many of them are flagship features. But like the iPhone SE, one thing you might be concerned mostly about for best overall value is how good the battery life is. You can get up to and around about 5 hours of screen on time, which competes with some of its bigger brother phones. Now, of course, you'll get better battery life out of the larger phones like the Plus and the Max, but as far as the iPhone 13 mini goes, it is a fantastic result when it comes to battery. Now, the only thing I would be wary of is as your phone gets older, perhaps beyond like 1 year old, where the battery might start degrading a little, and then you'll really start to notice battery life in the mini compared to one of the larger phones. I think that's been the most common complaint that I think of all the people that I know that have actually got an iPhone 13 mini. They've all said it is a fantastic phone and it helps you use the phone less, and that's because of the smaller screen where it encourages you to use it actually as a phone and messaging device rather than this like small tablet thing. Now, those people also said the battery life isn't that great over time, but of all those people, I think I would chalk them down to being a more demanding, more power user than most people would be. But what about when money isn't an object? What is the best flagship to buy? And actually, the best flagship wouldn't be here. The best flagship, I think, would be the iPhone 13 Pro or maybe the Pro Max, depending on the battery size. But Apple, being Apple, they have discontinued this to get people to buy the latest and greatest they have. So in terms of what you can actually buy right now, today, from Apple Direct, it's going to have to be the iPhone 14 Pro or the 14 Pro Max that I have here, depending on whether you want the larger screen and the larger battery life as well. Now, in terms of the 14, you get the new features including ProMotion and the always on display. You also get the controversial dynamic island, and whether either of those or all of those actually matter to you will completely depend, but what you can't argue about are features such as their Pro camera system, which for the first time actually in iPhone 14, perhaps actually do make these more pro than before. You get a 48 megapixel main camera, a macro mode, night mode portraits, Pro RAW for those kind of keen photographers, and for video features we have 4K cinematic mode to get that nice cinematic background blur, action mode, and you have 4K ProRes up to 30 frames per second. Oh, and you can also zoom in optically up to 3 times now rather than the 2 times we had before. Now those are some pretty decent upgrades over the previous versions. Now of course we get the A16 Bionic, which like I mentioned before, isn't really, in my opinion, an upgrade from the A15. Honestly, I haven't been able to tell the difference between my two phones. And you get the absolute best in class with the battery life, but in my opinion, not actually as good as the iPhone 13 Pro Max. Though to be fair to the iPhone 14, I do feel that most of these inefficiencies come down to the always on display not being as efficient as it could be. So if you can still get one today, personally, I'd actually still pick up an iPhone 13 Pro instead, particularly since that still has a SIM card tray, which is something that Apple has recently removed from the iPhone 14 range in the States. And I've been using the iPhone 14 Pro Max since its launch now, and I do love it. The battery life is probably the best in the business if you switch off the always on display, which I typically do when I'm traveling and dealing with time differences so that I can actually survive the long journeys without needing to charge. But with that said, if I was to buy it again, I think I would just get the regular sized iPhone 14 Pro and not the Max, as it's just less comfortable and difficult to use, like single-handedly. Switching it up a bit now, I want to talk to you about the most confusing pick now, because I don't feel that the iPhone 12 actually has a place in Apple's lineup. Actually, Ben, a friend of mine, recently bought one, but when looking at the specs, it just doesn't add up. Now, the iPhone 12 is the same price as the iPhone 13 mini. You've got all of the same cameras and the same battery life. So what's actually different? Well, on the 12, you have a slightly bigger screen, but that's it. Whereas on the 13 mini, you have a brighter screen at 800 nits versus 625 nits on this 12. You get cinematic mode at 1080p, and you get the A15 Bionic over the A14. So between these two devices, it seems to be a no-brainer. Basically, if you want a bigger screen, then yes, of course, get the 12. But for literally everything else, just get the 13 mini instead. But what if you are an existing iPhone user and you're thinking about upgrading? What should you be doing? Should you upgrade or should you wait? So my advice, if you're already on an iPhone 13 already, just don't. Like literally, there is zero reason to upgrade to an iPhone 14 right now, in my opinion. I only upgraded because I wanted to see what it was all about, and actually, I'm wishing I'd gone for the 14 Pro again instead because of the size. Now, if you're on an iPhone 12 already, then if you can wait for one more year, yes, I know it's a bit of a stretch, but there are, I hope, going to be some better things coming. Things like USB-C, for example, where I won't have to carry around one specific cable just to charge my iPhone anymore. Hopefully also some improvements to their always on display that doesn't eat as much battery perhaps. And so I think that if you can just hold out for an extra year, you're going to see a much bigger jump onto the next iPhone model. Then if you're on the last generation SE or maybe the iPhone 10 and you feel like you need an upgrade, then my recommendation would be to either get the iPhone 13 or the 13 mini. Or to be honest, if you can pick up an iPhone 13 Pro from somewhere like Amazon, still has some stock, then definitely have a look at that first before you just go and spend the extra money on the iPhone 14. And if you want to know more about why I think that, then click here.